Hi guys, I'm going to apologise first for the video being really late. I completely forgot that there was actually another essay. So hopefully, if you have revised already, this is more of just a quick revision because the exam is tomorrow. Oh my gosh. So anyway, I'm going to quickly go over the ethical issues that arise from two applications within psychology. So there are quite a few different things that you can look at. We have looked at the ethical issues in media and ethical issues in the military. So if I just get stuck in, again, the structure for this is also different. So it's not point explain evidence. It's more about making your point and giving a really good example. So I guess it's kind of like that. So anyway, let's start off with ethical issues within the media. So first one is informed consent. So in order to give informed consent, the participants of reality or factual TV programmes need to be fully aware of the consequences that could arise from taking part in whatever TV show that they're taking part in. The kind of things that they need to be aware of is the fact that they lose their privacy. They are unable to control what is shared about them or what is shown on the TV programme. Now this is a particular issue if children are involved because often they don't understand what it is that they're agreeing to. So consent is usually gained from parents. So an example is, I've never heard of this example, but it's quite an interesting one. A Child of Our Time, which was a BBC documentary, followed the lives of 25 babies that were born around the turn of year 2000, and they followed their lives from infancy through to childhood through to young adults, and clearly the question that they were asking is that, are we born or are we made? But it's obvious that these particular participants, so the children, they couldn't consent before or during the study because they were children, and babies in particular obviously can't give their consent, and even children, they don't quite understand what it is that they're consenting to, so you want to make sure that they're getting informed consent. So in this particular case, such as Gibson and Walk, consent was actually gained from their parents. So another example is manipulation. Major issue, especially for reality TV, is the extent to which the behaviour is manipulated. So the BPS guidelines are that the risk of harm must be no greater than that of their normal lives, meaning that it's unacceptable for the participants to be lied to, and the psychologists need to make it absolutely clear that they have the right to withdraw. However, there is a slight issue with this, because if they sign the right to take part and they agree to it, but once they've been filmed, the rights actually might lie with the production company, even if they withdraw. So there's a slight issue there. A really good example is that, I've watched it a few times, and probably you guys probably watched it more than I have, is Big Brother. So Big Brother is, as for those who don't know, it's a reality TV programme where a group of people, they live in a house together, a large house, they're isolated from the external environment, so from the public, but they're constantly watched by television cameras. So Professor David Wilson, who was a resident psychologist on the TV programme, was aware of the guidelines that the BPS had when he resigned, because the programme makers were actually asking him to create situations that would cause tension and distress in the house, and he didn't like that, so he resigned. So that's a really good way of manipulation, because they're manipulating their behaviour to create more entertainment for people. So, ethical issues and the military. Now, a key task for the military is to obtain information from enemies, and this is usually done by interrogation techniques. For example, the psychologist J.C. Lilly, I've never heard of her either, studied sensory deprivation by submerging volunteers in lukewarm water. Now, they had a face mask that they could breathe through, but they had very little stimulation from light, noise and clothes. Participants said that they had a feeling of unreality, and they lost their sense of identity. Now, they didn't know who they were, where they were, or what was happening, and the feeling of panic often forced them to abandon the experiment. Now, this psychological knowledge has been used for lots of different interrogation techniques, and one example is hooding, where the captive, the captive is to remain in a fixed position for a long period of time, and often they're forced to wear loose overalls, sometimes several sizes too big. Now, this provides sensory deprivation, like in the experiment, and a loss of personal identity, and the captive might also be stripped naked to increase feelings of vulnerability. So that kind of loss of identity, deprivation from sensory experiences, and even the feeling of vulnerability actually increases the chance of giving people information. I mean, it's quite clever, but slightly unethical. So, opinion is divided as to whether psychologists should be involved in the refining and the training of people that could potentially violate their professional code of ethics. So all psychologists have code of ethics that they have to stand by and they have to respect. So if a psychologist's ethical responsibilities conflict with the law, then they have to make it known to the committee of their ethical codes and try to resolve the issue. Now, if the conflict is irresolvable, the psychologist can actually ignore their code of ethics, only if a governing body asks them to do so. Reports from conflict areas suggest that psychologists have been involved in the refining and the training of others in a system of psychological torture techniques for use on suspected terrorists, and using tactics that actually violate the Geneva Convention. Now that's quite a lot to take in, and I'm struggling to kind of remember that, even though the exam's tomorrow. But it's kind of looking up on the fact that they found evidence that there are psychologists that are trying to kind of come up with these ideas and come up with these interrogation techniques that are actually using torture, and it's these techniques that are kind of they violate their code, so they're not allowed to do it because they're professionals, and it kind of breaks the rules of the Geneva Convention. So a final bit is that, on the other hand, psychologists can have a positive influence in the military through peace and conflict studies, which draw on psychological theory and research. So, for example, in the Robbers Cave experiment conducted by Sheriff, boys were divided into two groups where their athletic ability and their kind of camping experience was quite similar. So he arranged experiences or kind of situations that would increase destructive conflict. So again, this is slightly manipulative, but it's part of an experiment. And to resolve these conflicts, he got them to work together on something that they both needed. So, for example, kind of repairing a faulty water supply, which both of the teams needed. So whilst the conditions of the Sheriff experiment are completely different to conflict-torn situations in the real world, the conclusions that psychologists can come up with is that cooperation on shared goals is of vital importance to resolving conflict peacefully. So, if you're going to go over it really quickly, you've got informed consent, with the fact that you can't give informed consent, or they need to be aware of informed consent, and the example for that comes from A Child in Our Times, which is a BBC documentary. You've then got manipulation, and a good example which always sticks in people's mind is the fact that Big Brother manipulate the participants' behaviour to make it more entertaining. You've then got the ethics in the military, which looks at sensory deprivation in interrogation techniques and the fact that some psychologists have broken their code of ethics. But on the other hand, it can be beneficial because they've come up with the fact that Sheriff did a study to find that it's really important when resolving conflict peacefully that when people work on a goal together, this is actually what is achieved. So, I don't think I'll have time tonight to do another video before the exam, so I just want to wish everyone good luck. I am sure you'll do absolutely fine. Please comment if you have any last questions or any more examples that you need, and I'm more than happy to help. So good luck, guys.